Okay, today we're going to talk about something esoteric, if you will, and somewhat occult. Don't be scared of that word in any way. It just means hidden. They used to use that as an astronomical term for whenever things were blocked out by clouds and you couldn't see it for the night, when I were looking at the moon and things, or trying to find certain planets, or whenever they would be on the other side of the sun and therefore you wouldn't be able to be looking at them at night and so on like that. It's just hidden knowledge, and the reason that you know it as being a bad word is because they try to hide things from you of where things came from in its first place, in its origins. And it's kind of what the channel here is about in some ways, so we should get into this a little deeper. This is a Wheel of Fortune card, and it's a tarot card. Most people have heard of tarot cards, and they know it's like a fortune teller. They do this shuffling, let you cut them and so on, and then pow, and they can tell you a little fortune. Ironically, some of those work out. It works about as good as a horoscope does too, and there are reasons for that. A lot of people have talked about oracles and things, but one secret to oracles are people used to come from afar to tell them things, get a bunch of knowledge going on with them, and then they would ask them questions and they would give them an answer. See, the oracle at Siwa Oasis in the Egyptians, whenever they'd go to them and they'd ask if it was going to flood that year or whatever, they already had people from Ethiopia, which is not the current inhabitants there, by the way, but they had already had contact with them, and if they didn't have a good snow on their mountains and in through their hills that year, they would predict that it wouldn't be a big flood. In fact, they could predict a drought, and so on. And that would give credence, but it's also because someone is real observant and paying attention and not being led by your nose with a ring in it. Speaking of rings, here we have the center of this card, and it's a ring inside a ring. Most people think of all of this knowledge as being somewhat paganistic, but this, strangely, that actually just means agriculturists, as I've said before in some of my videos. And so this was older thought and the way people used to think when agriculture had come around. And it still lingers on today. In fact, it was so strong, these Aryan people that went around and spread this knowledge to them, that they've enveloped it into themselves, even though it comes from a time of Taurus or after, in most cases. What we're looking here is an eye in the sky that's looking at you in the center. Most people, if you took that to its essence, would actually be a sun symbol. But it has a lot of things connected in with it. In fact, whenever you look at something like this, you would think that somebody could flip down that card and say, Wheel of Fortune, da-da-da. And that's what you might get from a reader. And they have esoteric knowledge that goes with what they're supposed to say versus what comes out, versus what they think about you and what's going on. And the current time of the year coming up too, by the way, and other things all come into play here. Sometimes it's kind of like whenever you see the Wizard of Oz, and that man kind of figured everything out and what was going on with this girl. Picked her purse and then just called out the lady, and they were like, whoa, crystal balls. It's got something to do with it too. I've seen this same representation with a crystal ball in the center of it, but that's usually on another card. Let's get into this one if we can. There's so much esoteric knowledge wrapped up in this one card, it would take a decent sized video for me to start to get through, and then to show you connections and the fact that this is actually in the Bible. old and new. Would probably blow your mind. But this is something that came down through the pipe, and it still has echoes that are showing today. In your four corners, you see the four cardinal points of the zodiac. One is Aquarius, the man. Taurus, the bull, down in the bottom left. Bottom right is Leo, the lion. Top right-hand corner is actually an eagle, but it really should have been a scorpion. In fact, there's a connection why the Egyptian Horus dies from a scorpion sting and then gets reborn as that falcon, or as that bird symbol, for we have it there now, and the idea of King Scorpion before it. But that's got to be a whole nother video to go into that. This is the 10th card in the deck, and that's kind of special. An ace goes over the top, just like in real cards. Most people don't realize it, but this card, its shape itself is based on the golden rule that we talked about in Greek buildings and so on. Shapes, windows, all kinds of things. You notice that each one of those are winged. They have wings. And that's supposed to show you that it's celestial, that it's up in the heavens. And you should be able to easily get that with our idea of angels. For if you didn't know any better, that one in the top left-hand corner wouldn't be Aquarius. It would be an angel. Other representations right there show it as a man, and a lot of people say that's either Adonis, because there's Greek writing around the middle part there, or Jesus, because it kind of looks like that too. But it's just supposed to have been the common man. Let's look at that center part, for it has two parts trapped inside of it. Inside the center of it, you'll see that there's a double spoke that's going on here. It's a cross and an X. We've shown how that X deals with the equinoxes and solstices and so on, and this is really the year of life, a whole cyclic year, if you will, a watch face, if you will, a clock face, a calendar in ways, but it just is a representation of that. It's not supposed to be pinpointing a date necessarily, but you can get dates out of this with the idea of Taurus and Leo, and whenever that would have been the cardinal points. One esoteric showing that it actually works with the Bible is that, you know, there is a cardinal, goes along with a bishop and the pope and so on. All of that has roots that go back to concepts that are built on this astrotheology, as I've talked about before. But skip that for a minute and we'll keep putting pieces of the Bible back in, and I'll finish with it pretty good too, I guess, here. What else do we have in front of us? Well, around that wheel there are letters. And if you'll notice, the four cardinal points that it's showing are Greek letters, and then the X letters there are showing Hebrew. Which one should I do first? Let's just do the Hebrew. Finger of God here. This is Yod, Hey, Vod, Hey. This is God. Give it a minute. Hold that thought, and let's start going the other way. For what we're looking at is tarot cards. T-A-R-O. It means to teach. You notice these people are all with books, right? If we were to, let's see if that gets about right. If we were to take and spell that the other way, though, T-O-R-A, this is the law. And it come about in the age of Taurus here, which turned in the age of Aries, and is now the dawning age of the Aquarius of man. How many more words can we find here? Well, there's a lot of them here. This is going around and around, right? Here's R-O-T-A, rota. It's where we get our word rotation from. Each letter has a one way or the other to go around on it, spinning on this circle. In fact, if we go from the A-T-O-R, that's Ator. This is symbolically the mother of all. Ha, the word, if you will. When they say Hashem, that's supposed to be the word, Ha. And th, as in theology. For a lot of people here had a TH sound real prevalent in their linguistics. Hathor. Hathor. You following me? Hopefully it's big enough. Is there even more? Well, yeah, there actually is. If we start from the O and go around, this is the word. O-R-A-T, orate. R to orate, to speak. The word was spoken. This is the word. This is Yahweh. Inside the Sphinx, we can actually see all of these characters that are supposed to be in there if we think about it. Or perhaps they've all been a different character. Perhaps it wasn't Anubis, but it was looking a little like a bull's head when they originally started it. And in eroding away, they tried to make it look like Leo. And eroding away, now they made it into looking like a man. But in between, it might have been Aries. And that might be the reason that the head is so small on it for a recarving. That's for a different concept and doesn't really connect with it. But whenever you say the Sphinx here, what would that have to do with everything? Well, it is a clock mechanism like that. Some might be able to see something like that whenever they talk about how it's hooked up with the belt of Orion and Leo and points towards it when the sun comes up. Other representations that you might be well aware of are the lamassu. This is the lion bull man with wings that are the guardians of the gates in ancient Sumeria, in Babylon, if you will. We're going to get into that here in just a minute too, and we'll go back to Babylon just for a minute. But that is these four cardinal points. You see, once people realized, because some people knew and a lot didn't, and they took things out of context, and also totally got out of the right zodiacal year to start putting things on certain things. The Egyptians were guilty of this and carried it on. In fact, a lot of people did, because of that learning and knowing it was there, and they were like, well, in this bull symbology. It was later taken into rams in the time of Aries and Aryans and so on that we're talking about, which had come before, hence this whole concept. that Torah of the laws that came out, and Taurus, at time whenever that switches over. But when it switched over, nobody switched the cardinal points of the zodiac, and still we're still looking at this, even though we lagged all the way through, around through Aries, Pisces, and now hitting Aquarius, and we can line back up again. There's always 3 that go with it. There's 12 around here, and there was a sacred crew of 12 gods. They all had wives too. Would you like to see all of that? Hold on, I'm not quite through with this yet. Here we see Ophiuchus, and it's the serpent that's all woo and you can't talk about. It used to be a major part of the zodiac, and at one time used to be during the fall and winter of the year, and to a people that went through the seasons like this, caused a big problem. And that's the same snake that steals from Gilgamesh, and is the same story of Hercules. And others. What's this over here? What's that? What is that? Looks like a red fox. Yeah, red fox or firefox or the phoenix too, that started off the video here, by the way, has a lot to do with this concept too. But that's representation of a red-headed god that we talked about named Typhon. Now, Typhon, during a great calamity, everything got screwed over, and Zeus, a god of war, with lightnings and storms coming in and finally calming things down, ended up taking over this sky god. Same thing had happened in Samaria, and then later in Akkadians. In Samaria was Enkidu, or Enki himself, who was Lord of the Earth, and what it actually means. But then he got taken over by Enlil. Same concept. I did a whole series on storm gods about this. That same concept rolls over and over again, but also it has to do with Seth of the Bible, and Set, and Seti, if you will, of the Egyptians. And now, after the first dynasty fell apart of the ancient Egyptians, the second one started off with Seth-Baribsan, who was a redhead. And then later, to build in a mythology, they had this because he was one of the people, because when it fell apart, he was the one that brought it back around and made it all happen. He was the only one who could get past that snake right there, because otherwise he would hypnotize you with this big woo-woo. Circles going round and round and round. I saw a picture in a gallery of a fallen angel, and she looked a lot like you. There's a reason there's clouds in this picture. I've actually seen the same thing, and it looked like they were making them out of clouds, like whenever you see things in the clouds and pictures. There's a lot of different versions of this, but this was a good one to pick. So how can we see this and this 4 cardinal points and the idea and that in God, as it says right here and shows, how can we show that in the Bible? I mean, a lot of people wouldn't know that it's there, and there's not no astrotheology things. Well, there is a few stories. Let's look into this real quick. You ever heard of Ezekiel's will? You know, Ezekiel's will with the angels with their faces. Let's just go to the script here real quick on it. Bible Gateway, that'll work. This got a lot of translations in it and everything, and pardon with me and stay with me. I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs here into it. In my 13th year, in the 4th month on the 5th day, while I was among the exiles, our captives, by the Kibar River, the heavens were opened and I saw visions of God. What's left out there that said the Kibar River was in Babylonia, but it says it in the second part. It's still there. On the 5th of the month, it was the 5th year of the exile of King Joachim. The word of the Lord came to Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, by the Kibar River, in the land of the Babylonians. There the hand of the Lord was on him. Funny how it started there, and a lot of things go on with that, but let's see. There I saw a windstorm coming out of the north, an immense cloud with flashing lightning and surrounded by brilliant light. This is interjected in there because that's that storm god, isn't it? The center of the fire looked like a glowing metal, and the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures, and the appearance of their form was human, but each of them had 4 faces, see if this sounds familiar, and 4 wings. The Sumerian statues, you'll see a lot of them where they have an upper and a lower wings on them. We'll talk about 4 wings here in a minute. The center of the fire looked like glowing metal, and the fire was that looked like 4 living creatures. In their appearance was a form of human, but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, their feet were like those of a calf, gleamed with burnished bronze. Under the wings on their 4 sides they had human hands. All 4 of them had faces and wings, and the wings of one touched the wings of another. Each one went straight ahead. They did not turn as they moved. This is the reason that the ark shows the angels with the wings touching thing on the top of it, and a few other reasons on that too, but it has a lot to do with birds here, and that ancient bird cult that I told you about long ago. Zoom in here so you can see it better. Sorry. So, just to get into what these creatures look like. See, a lot of people turn this and they go, man, with all that weird stuff going on, that's a UFO or something that came down, and that was God, and it's a UFO. I can see where you can get that out of it. If I ever open up that box on UFO things, this will be one of the things that we'll talk about a few times. So their wings touched, they went straight ahead, and they didn't turn as they moved, and people are saying, oh, that's hovering, and they're describing the wheels, and people have made these spacecraft look like, lost in space. Their faces looked like this. Each of the 4 had the face of a human being, and on the right side each had the face of a lion, and on the left face of an ox or a cow. Each also had the face of an eagle. Ta-da! Such were their faces. Each had 2 wings spreading out upward, each one touching that of the creature on each other side, and the wings covering his body. So 2 up, 2 down. Each one went straight ahead. Where the spirit would go, they would go, without turning as they went. The appearance of the living creatures was like burning coals of fire, or like torches. Fire moved back and forth among the creatures. It was bright, and lightning flashed out of it. The creatures sped back and forth like flashes of lightning. I've had people say that last part of it is the effect whenever somebody lights up a bowl of weed and or heroin stuff and burns it, and there's these little sparks and bubbles going around on it. And that's what this coal and fire and smoke idea that was going on here. A thunderstorm and this, that, and the other, and hey, I thought about it and I saw God. What he's really looking at is a wheel inside a wheel, and they talk about it and everything, and they had eyes on the outsides of the wheel and all this. Well, those eye symbols are actually those sun symbols that we look at quite often. And moon symbols, just like that wizard's hat that we talked about that was covered with them. Let's see if I can go to another one here. And so there it is in Old Revelations right there. And oh, that's an astrolabe. He saw it. Somebody showed it to him. Pretty amazing. Revelations. We won't start this first. We'll go on into it about chapter 4. About the throne in heaven. So here we are again, seeing this God now, right? This is the God of the Bible, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not. After this I looked, and there before me was a door standing open in heaven. And the voice I had first heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, "Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this." At once I was in the Spirit, so he became a ghost. And there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it, blank. And the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and ruby. So the gods are always covered in gemstones and greatness and gold and so on. So here we go. But of course, red is attached to this too. It also was, if I went on the Ezekiel's wheel, a rainbow that shone around like an emerald encircled the throne. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones. Seated on them were 24 elders. Now, the elders are people that are worshiping the god El. And this is a Canaanite thing, and it comes back for there. But here we are in the presence of God. And though there's one who's the king of the gods, which is that Marduk idea, or Ninurta before him, or Zeus taking over, you're following me? Same kind of concept. There's 24 of them, though. Well, there's 12 zodiacs, and each one of them had a wife. So here's that council that they talk about, and it's Elohim is plural. Well, yeah, Elohim is definitely plural in Hebrew, and they never got rid of that fact. And also, Elohim is the council of elders of El. It's the elite. It's the elephant in the room. It's as big as the Tower of Babel. That El was the god of the patriarchs all the way through whenever they changed it to Yahweh and Yah. Ezekiel later gets echoed and called about as Hezekiah, rather than Ezekiel. Like Angel, like Michael is Michael, Ariel, Gabriel, Raphael. The elders knew this. They were dressed in white and had crowns of gold on their heads, 'cause from the throne came flashes of lightning, rumblings, and peals of thunder. In front of the throne were 7 lamps were blazing. These are the 7 spirits of God. Well, these are the 7 planets, 7 luminaries. It's the 5 known planets and then the sun and the moon. Also in front of the throne were what would look like a sea of glass, clear as crystal. Well, there's kind of that crystal ball thing idea again. And crystals have a lot to do with this in some ways. But also when we talk about that 7 spirits, that's where your menorah concept comes from. So here's these 24 guys in the council of God. In the center around the throne were 4 living creatures, and they were covered with eyes. Sounds familiar again. In front and in back, the first living creature was like a lion, the second like an ox, the third had a face like a man, and the fourth was like a flying eagle. Each of the 4 living creatures now all of a sudden had 6 wings. This is multiplying, isn't it? And it was covered with eyes all around and even under its wings. Day and night they never stopped saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." Of course, this is an idea about bringing Jesus and the second coming into the concept. And I've talked before, the concept of Armageddon already happened to those people in Jerusalem in 73 AD. In fact, that's exactly what Jesus said, because the Bible is written after the fact. Whenever he says, "A generation shall not pass," those here with me today, talking to his disciples, which were also a crew of 12 people. A council, if you will. Nowadays, you wouldn't think that we had as many gods as the Greeks had and so on, but if you just look into it, with as many saints as they've made for everything from toothaches to whatever, they have one for everyone, and that's, gosh, that's even thicker, isn't it? That's mainly in Catholicism, though. So, 24, and that, of course, is them and their wives, which are knocked out of this concept, too. So many times when I try to look up things like this, I just can't find the right thing. Hell, when I did my ISIS video, all that seemed to come up were missionary peoples until I put in ISIS, Egypt goddess. So this Ezekiel's wheel concept of a wheel and a wheel and a wheel, for the spirit of the living creatures were inside the wheel, and we were all in this wheel, and this great wheel in the sky that keeps going around, and it's an astrolabe. And one is our declamation versus the horizon, and the other one is the concept of the center of it. You can also get another venting that shows where the moon's going around versus what plane that we're on. If I was to take this picture right here and take out that symbol there, which is the symbol of Saturn turned on its side, and pull it out, we're left with just a wheel. This, of course, showing you wheels and everything, but this all came from the people that brought the wheel and the cows that go along with it and so on. The ox, all of the foods for agriculture and what goes along with it. But this is also a nautical symbol. So it connects time and space together. We talk about sacred geometry, all of a sudden the numbers start fitting together. And this idea, when people hear this story, they come up with all kinds of ideas on what it could look like. But in reality, we just looked at that card and we saw what people saw a long time ago was the face of God. This is in the orate form here of these, but it's the Wheel of Fortune card. And that's Yahweh. That's the face of God. This is the whole thing. It has to do with us, everything around us, the cosmos. If you want to unwrap that now and say science and everything that goes on in it, or the fact that they've become, or these Caucasians, this whole book thing's about, became these gods of the earth and have come up with things that if you were to compare it, if you were just to be able to go back 2,000 years, you could just blow everybody's mind away. They would think you were God. Well, it probably wouldn't take much. You might be able to do it with a Bic lighter. I was Strangely, whenever I see this corded basket here, and if you look, it's woven around in a circle. I did a video not too long ago about this concept, but what reminded me all of a sudden, or I got a memory of all of a sudden, is something from the Wayback Machine I saw on a VCR tape. So that ought to date it. Oh, and VCRs were pretty new whenever this happened too. But on a VCR tape showing a Persian lady and people that were there that were making textiles and so on. And of course the big wahoo was the carpets. But the thing that came to mind here was whenever she was making baskets like this, where they have to weave rope. And then after they weave the rope, they go around with it as they're putting it together and stitch it all together. And go on up, and then they curl it on itself on the top. And these are those big baskets like you see in Indiana Jones, right? And she gets put in one of them and so on, and they're trying to catch her and so on. But they're looking at her doing it, and the guys are talking to them, and they've got an interpreter talking back and forth through them. And they tell you one thing, that she's got this tale that she tells that is so long, it takes this long for her to make a basket. And when the other lady brings another basket up there and they start trying to talk to her about it, they ask her, she mumbles some crap and walks off, and then the guy leans to the interpreter like, what would she say? And she goes, she does all damn day. So apparently whenever they make these baskets, she hears the same story that goes along with this idea, but it takes quite the few hours to do this. But then as they're talking to these ladies, they ask them about how strong they are and this, that, and the other. And one of them says, which is interpreted to say, that, yeah, these are strong. This was what Noah's Ark was made out of. And when I was a kid at the time, I didn't quite have the total connections. And I thought, oh, you mean the basket of Moses, because this is what they talk about. It's a bitumen wrapped coil basket, and they put bitumen on it and then put him down the thing here. Well, really, whenever you look into it, the ancient Sumerian story was a coracle. This is a round craft that's done that way. You literally could take that basket she's got and make it much larger, which they give the size of, and it's huge. Put bitumen on it, some wood supports on the inside of it, and you really make something that's like Noah's Ark. Looks like it more in the kids' books because the vantage point they give there. Only problem is there's no giraffe poking out of it. Same story. Has the dove and the raven, it coming back. Some dates have been changed and so on, but not enough for anybody that read both of the stories to be able to go, what? Of course, in a modern day, we know there's a lot of floods that happened all over the place that people recorded that were bad and in part of their mythology. I still say that a lot of that comes from the idea that came from the Younger Dryas when a lot of things flooded in and everybody had a common story, and whenever they had one that happened to them after that, it strengthened the idea. But the one that we go in with Sumeria has to do with the Bible and so on, had to do with a local flood there that was bad, devastating. Only got to like 18 cubits deep in Sumeria, but if you read the Lament of Inanna, it killed almost everybody and all the cattle and everything. And then as it washed away, it washed all the people and cattle and everything away down into the rivers, and they were clogged with them. It was terrible. Not to end on a bad note here. So, how much symbology can be found just in one of these playing cards, the tarot cards? Really quite a lot. I could go on again. There's a couple of other little layers that are here, but maybe we'll save that for another day. Oh, I guess I can end with this point here, and that might cover it for well. So the inside here, as you see, there are some symbols in here. And what are those? Those are these planets. Now, the planet means wandering star. And so there used to be planets, and a lot of people worship the planets and so on, but certain people had figured out that those aren't planets, those aren't stars. Those really are a planet, which is different. Sumerians even said that those stars that twinkle in the sky are like a torch, which is like our sun, but in the distance, far, far away, saying that, well, there's the sun, but If you take it real far away, like a torch is real bright, you take it real far away, it's just a dot, like car tail lights or car headlights in the distance. It's pretty intelligent, but whenever we realized that, we said, wow. And so there's only one star, the rest are planets. That's all different. And everything revolves around the sun. So the sun began everything with that let there be light situation. All the other ones are satellites that are around it, just like the zodiac's around us, but also like those gods that are around the god of the sun god, Jesus. Yeah. And once they figured that out, there was only one star to worship. And then that goes back to everything. For the Greeks told you that the ancients actually only believed in two gods. They believed in an ancient sky god, cosmos, everything. And they had his son, quite often, who was a resurrection god. So they compared it, of course, to their Zeus and Dionysus. But when we look at the Bible, both of its forms there, aren't we looking at an Old Testament sky god and a storm god, and then Jesus, a sun god that puts it all back in place, right where it all started again, like the zodiac and that great wheel of time that keeps going around and around. Another thing, you don't think that that is trapped in the Bible or trapped in, theology or the churches and stuff. And we talk about cardinals and cardinal points of this type of situation, but how about if we talk about a monastery? You know what a monastery is? Yeah, okay. What does that mean? Well, mono is one, and aster is star. Monastery is, there's just one star. See? There's a few other connectives that I could go off with, but I think we'll end on that one and all these connectives. Oh, we went through a lot there, didn't we? Sphinx, snake, 4 cardinal points, connection, symbology, God himself. Peace.